Have you ever wondered if success is just, well, a biological lottery? Like, are you simply born with a set amount of intelligence and talent and that's it? Or is success something you actually build, brick by brick, through relentless efforts? It's a huge question, and the answer we're going to explore today might completely change how you view your own potential. Welcome to today's Explainer. We are diving headfirst into a massive cultural phenomenon. I'm talking about the wildly popular framework proposed by psychologist Carol Dweck in her book, Mindset, The New Psychology of Success. We're going to break down the profound appeal of her theory, and then we're going to hit it with a surprising, rigorous scientific reality check. Here is a roadmap for the analysis. 1. 2 ways of thinking. 2. The power of yet. 3. Mindsets in the real world. 4. The scientific reality check. And finally, 5. Philosophy versus data. Let's jump right in. Section 1. 2 ways of thinking. Dweck's core thesis is actually pretty straightforward. She proposes that we basically navigate our entire lives guided by one of 2 fundamental beliefs. On one hand, you have the fixed mindset. This is the belief that your intelligence, your character, your creative abilities, they're just static givens. You're born with them. Because of that, someone with a fixed mindset usually avoids challenges because struggling makes them feel like they lack natural talent. But on the flip side, we have the growth mindset. This is viewing intelligence like a muscle that can be developed over time. These folks crave learning, they embrace challenges, and they see effort not as a sign of weakness, but literally as the essential key to mastery. What's really fascinating is how these 2 mindsets react when things go wrong. To a fixed mindset, failure is completely devastating. It's a permanent identity label. If you fail, you are a failure. So you make excuses or blame others to protect your ego. But to the growth mindset, failure is just a predictable, informative outcome on the road to success. It's just a problem to be solved, which makes people with this mindset incredibly resilient. Section 2, the power of yet. So where do these mindsets come from? We aren't born with them. They're actually built from a very early age, heavily influenced by how adults praise us. Decades of research show something incredibly counterintuitive. Praising innate intelligence, telling a kid, "Wow, you're so smart," actually harms them. It makes them risk-averse because they become terrified of losing that smart label. On the other hand, process praise, saying things like, "I really love the strategy you used," or "You worked incredibly hard on that," fosters a growth mindset. It rewards the effort and it builds adaptable learners who aren't afraid to stumble. And that brings us to the immense power of just one little word, yet. Dweck observed a high school in Chicago where instead of giving failing students an F, they gave them the grade not yet. Talk about a total paradigm shift. It treats failure not as this tragic, dead-end endpoint, but as a stepping stone. It tells you, hey, you haven't figured it out yet, but you are actively on a learning curve. Okay, Section 3, Mindsets in the Real World. Let's take this out of the classroom and into the hyper-competitive world of professional sports. Tennis legend John McEnroe is basically your textbook fixed mindset athlete. The guy had unbelievable raw talent, but he fully believed that talent alone should guarantee him a win. Whenever he was really challenged or started losing, he would crumble. He'd blame the referees, the weather, his racket, anything to protect his ego. He even admitted later that he never fulfilled his true potential because he hated the actual process of getting better. Now, let's contrast that with basketball icon Michael Jordan, the ultimate growth mindset icon. Jordan wasn't just coasting on his natural physical gifts. He actively used his limitations and his past failures as pure fuel. He practiced relentlessly. He was constantly reinventing his game, seeking out harsh coaching to develop totally new skills. He knew that raw talent wasn't enough. Effort was the only way to activate his true potential. And guess what? We see the exact same thing play out in the corporate world. Remember Enron? That company literally worshipped natural talent. They created this toxic fixed mindset culture where employees were absolutely terrified of looking incompetent, which directly led to hiding mistakes and those fatal massive cover-ups. Contrast that with growth mindset leaders like Jack Welch at GE. He actively sought out negative feedback and even publicly admitted his own multi-million-dollar mistakes just to prove to his team that learning and adapting was the real goal. All right, moving on to Section 4, the scientific reality check. Up to this point, Dweck's framework sounds completely flawless, doesn't it? Intuitively, it just makes so much sense. But we have to look at the data. And recently, the scientific pushback has been surprisingly jarring. Take a look at this incredibly tiny number, 0.05. According to massive meta-analyses, 0.05 to 0.08 is the actual, statistically trivial effect size that these mindset interventions have had on real-world student academic achievement. So despite schools pouring millions of dollars into teaching kids about the growth mindset, their actual standardized test scores barely moved an inch. Yeah, the broader scientific community is raising some major red flags here. Huge systematic reviews, like the CISC study in 2018 and the McNamara reviews around 2022, looked at tens of thousands of students. They found that positive results were actually extremely rare. And it gets a bit worse. They identified severe publication bias. It turns out the studies boasting those massive positive effects were frequently led by researchers who had financial conflicts of interest, like people who were actively selling mindset books and consulting programs, including Dweck's own team. When independent researchers ran the numbers, they generally found almost zero academic impact. To complicate things even further, researchers have identified what they call an epidemic of the false growth mindset. This is that ironic situation where well-meaning educators just run around constantly praising a child's effort purely to protect their self-esteem after a failure. But they don't actually teach them any rigorous new learning strategies. It essentially took a really interesting cognitive tool and watered it down into an empty, feel-good platitude. Which brings us to our final section, number 5, philosophy versus data. So how in the world do we reconcile this? We have a theory that makes profound sense on an individual level, backed by incredible success stories, but population-level data suggests it totally fails as a scalable academic intervention. Well, the key takeaway is that we need to separate the systemic from the personal. Sure, teaching mindset might not magically spike standardized test scores across thousands of public schools, but as an internal philosophy, it remains exceptionally powerful. It's a vital framework for building your own psychological resilience, letting you separate your intrinsic human worth from your immediate short-term failures. And that's the thought I want to leave you with today to wrap up this explainer. Does a framework actually need to be statistically proven to boost grades across tens of thousands of schools to be genuinely useful in your own life? Even if the broad data is flawed, making the active choice to view your next struggle as a not yet rather than a permanent defeat might still be the absolute best tool you have for your own personal growth. So keep that in mind the next time you face a challenge. Thanks for joining me, and keep learning.